Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. I hope you are doing well. I have some exciting news about the podcast itself. I want to drop a second episode during the week. Now, if you've been a long time listener, we have close to 120 episodes, some fantastic conversations, some amazing guests who have been so kind with their wisdom and knowledge, and who have shared repeatedly on this platform. So starting soon, we'll be releasing bite-sized episodes every Friday. So you still will have the interview format, the main new conversations on Monday, like you're hearing this one, but we will be dropping a secondary small bite-sized snippet of one of the interviews and conversations that have already happened in the past, and that'll go out on a Friday. So you'll have a Monday long form episode and then a bite-sized repeat episode on Friday. So more yoga for you to enjoy. So that's something that we're going to be adding here on our Let's Talk Yoga platform. As always, if you enjoy this content, please remember that you can rate us on Spotify. It makes such a difference when you do. Leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts is extremely helpful. And make sure you're on my bite-sized newsletter, which goes out every couple of weeks. The next one goes out next Friday. So it's May 19th as I'm recording this Friday, not this Friday, but the one after. Okay. So that's it from me. Let's jump into today's episode. Hi, my name is Arundhati, and you're listening to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. I'm an ex-Bollywood dancer turned yoga and wellness educator. I've built a 6-figure business as an immigrant, woman of color yoga teacher with no business background, no handstands, pure instinct, and the free information found on Google. If you love doing yoga and you dream of teaching it someday, this podcast is for you. We go over everything from doing and teaching yoga to scaling a small business, living a modern yoga lifestyle, and so much more. You'll find interesting, fun, raw conversations along with some tips, tricks, strategies, and insights in this podcast. So grab your cup of chai and let's jump in. So recently I did a workshop earlier this week about 10 ways to enhance your yoga class right away. And I know a lot of you signed up for it. Some of you have watched it on replay. A lot of you came live and watched it, and participated in it, which was amazing. To me, the most special part of doing these workshops is actually being in that live Zoom room and interacting with all of you and hearing about your stories and having that exchange and nerding out on teaching yoga. It brings me so much joy. I know some of you have been writing to me on Instagram and asking if you can get access to the replay. Now, unfortunately, if you haven't signed up ahead of time, we're not able to send out the replay at this point, but I do hope to bring it back in some form later. But on today's episode, I want to give you a snippet of what went down in this week's workshop. Okay. I believe that there is enough value in this conversation. It's not all 10 things that we spoke about in the workshop, but there are definitely a few here that you can take to your classes right away. Okay. So let's begin right at the top. Okay. I'm only addressing how to enhance your asana class. Okay. And by that, I mean, I'm not going to be talking about how to cue your students or how to engage them in a pose physically as much. I'm going to be talking about some of the more invisible things that will help them understand that deeper yoga exists and that you can access it through asana class. Because honestly, most of us will get access to yoga through asana class. Millions of people start yoga today through asana, right? So why not just make our asana teaching game a lot stronger, a lot more irresistible, a lot more relatable? And that was the reasoning behind offering this workshop. I also believe this year will be 10 years of Aham Yoga in October. And I think that if I look back, what do I do at Aham Yoga? I teach asana classes every single day. Well, almost every single day. The studio is open 7 days, but I teach now 5 days a week. I have taught longer bouts before. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that as yoga teachers, we should be really engaging our class through asana. And that's what I want to talk about. Okay. So the first thing that would be, you want to strengthen the bond between the student and their practice. Okay, you want to strengthen the asana relationship, the asana bond. And I want to make it very clear that I do not mean teach harder poses, teach them harder vinyasa, more tricky transitions. It's not about intensity. It's not about making them sweat. Okay. What I mean by strengthen their asana bond is shift the focus. Shift the focus and add more context. Add more context about two things, the practice as well as the pose. Okay. For example, if you are teaching Vrikshasana, tree pose, add context about the balance. Okay. Tell them how it is not about whether the foot is placed low on the ground or whether you're using wall support or whether the foot is high up towards the inner thigh. Just because your leg is higher doesn't mean your tree is better than a tree that is where the foot is close to the ground. What really matters is how present you are, how steady you feel in your body, your breath, and your awareness, your attention. That is what matters. Okay. It doesn't matter if the knee is going up or the foot is going up. If it goes up, great, good for you. If it doesn't go up, it is still equally a great pose. Adding context also means making it normal to fall out of balance, making it normal to be wobbly. I always tell my classes, when you're in a balance pose, a part of balance is falling out of balance, even in life, right? Sometimes everything is balanced and going smoothly. Suddenly things will fall off balance, but we do have the ability to come back into balance. And that is where our focus should be. So that is what I mean by adding context to the practice. Now let's take a second example here. Bakasana, crow pose. Okay. When I teach arm balances, I always teach them the seated, the supine, the more adaptable versions first. Okay. And I add context and I tell them, now I make it more pose related. I'm like, hey, while this is so great for physical reasons, mental reasons, I give them a little more context there. But I talk to them about when they're older, right? Their joints may not be able to hold the load like this. And hence it's important to have adaptable versions. Some days their wrists are tired. Okay. Or if you are like me, where you busted your ACL at the start of the year, you can't even do arm balances. So what next? But I could do a seated version. I could do a supine version. So learning that all poses, it's not about stuffing the person into the shape of the pose. It is changing the pose to suit the needs of the person. So having conversations like this, even things like if you have shorter arms and a long torso or long legs, arm balances are inherently harder, including Bakasana, especially Bakasana. So in that case, seated versions may be better for you. Supine versions may be better for you. There are other poses where you'll be at an advantage, but in certain arm balances, you are at a disadvantage. So that's what I mean by adding context to a pose and the practice. So strengthen that relationship, make it really relatable, add context. It will make a difference. Okay. In the same breath, I would say, teach high quality yoga classes. Okay. And what I mean by high quality, it's subjective. What is high quality to me will be a little different than what is high quality for you. So find out what you mean when you say you want to teach a high quality yoga class. Okay. Or a high quality asana class. For me, it is one simple thing. It is to meet the student where they're at and to grow their practice from that point on. To make sure they know that yoga is something that they can relate to, something that they can adapt no matter what is going on in their life, and something that they come to even on their bad days. Okay. And they can rely on me to help them structure their practice. That's what I mean by a high quality class where the student feels successful at the end of the day. It's not about me, my sequence, what I said, how I made others feel. No, it's about how they feel and how they relate to the practice. Okay. So just make sure everyone feels successful. They're able to progress in some way. They can understand and execute what you're asking them to do reasonably effortlessly. Time is managed well. All body types and needs are catered to the best of your ability. Okay. And where you actually teach the practice, not the pose, where you teach the person, not the pose. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Okay. For example, what I mean by teaching the person and not the pose is if somebody is stepping forward into Anjaneyasana from downward facing dog, okay, in English sometimes referred to as low lunge pose, and someone who has shorter arms will always have a harder time stepping through. So notice that. If you notice that, call it out. Say, hey, if you've got shorter arm bones, and in my studio, I tell the student directly if they have shorter arms, I'd be like, put a block like this, and I demonstrate on my body. and put a block bit under your hands. And now step through. You've just lengthened your arm bone, and this will be an easier, smoother transition for you. So really noticing the person and their needs. Okay. If we all start doing that, even in bits and pieces, we'll make such a difference. Okay. So teach high quality yoga classes, and then link the goal of asana to greater yoga when possible. Okay. And it is possible. You can't do this in every breath of asana class, but you can absolutely remind people often about that it's not about the pose. It's not about stuffing yourself into a shape. There is no perfect shape of a pose, though we do hold basic alignment for safety reasons. Okay. It's not about how good the pose looks. It's about how present you are, how it feels on the inside. There's no measure for a good pose. And I talk about what it means to be present, what it means to accept yourself in that pose, what contentment means. And I also remind people it's okay if you're going slower than what I'm asking you to do. Okay. It doesn't matter. We don't have to match. We don't have to look like we're in the same pace. Move slower if you need to. Doesn't matter if you need to take a completely different sequence. If you're exhausted and I'm asking you to do restorative and the class is doing something else, it's totally okay. We normalize that. We normalize having two people next to each other, one doing the most hard version of a pose and somebody doing the complete opposite. And in our studio, though that's a normal scenario, nobody will blink. Okay. But it's not been like that. We've had to build up to it. Okay. The only thing I ask people to really notice nowadays is, are you steady? Are you steady in your body? Are you steady in your breath? And are you steady in your awareness and in your mind about the body and the breath and the present moment? And then I link that to Sthiram Sukham Asana. Okay. So it's Patanjali's definition of what an asana should be, essentially saying steadiness and ease are the goal of a pose. And I keep reminding them that if you can find steadiness and in body, breath, and awareness, and you're in all these contorted shapes, and if you can find that even when everything is wobbling, that can extend into moments of your life. The more you practice it on your mat, the more effortless it'll become in your life. And that's kind of what I mean by linking the goal of asana to greater yoga when possible. Okay. This is just the first part of what we did in the workshop. This was part 1 of our 10-part series, but I just thought I'd pop in here very quickly, leave you with this because I didn't want to disappoint some of you who did not sign up on time. Hopefully next time you will sign up ahead of time. There are 9 more things that we explored in the workshop. I'll make sure you have access to it the next time we do it. Okay. That's it from me. I'll be back here next week. I believe Vikramjit Singh is lined up next for a wonderful conversation. I don't want to give too much away just yet, but that's dropping next week. Until then, make sure you are on the newsletter that is going out next week. I would not want you to miss that. It is part 4 of our new newsletter, and I will see you in another episode soon. Take care. Bye-bye.